Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live cooking demonstration. Bear with me just a moment as I move some things around and get my camera set up here, and then we will go ahead and get started. All right, so good afternoon again. My name is Ryan Smith. I am the Wellness Program Administrator here with Georgia State University's Employee Development and Wellness Services. By trade, I am a registered dietitian, so I am focused on all the different elements of nutrition and how we can bring that all into the meals that we make each and every day to enjoy and nourish our bodies. Now, before we get started, just a couple quick things to cover. We are recording this session. We record it so that you can view it again at a later time or share it with a colleague who may have missed it. We do upload all of our recordings to our EDWS YouTube page, so we encourage you to check that out and see past cooking demonstrations as well as some of our other offerings. During today's presentation, if you've got any questions, comments, things you might want to share with other people, please make use of that chat feature in the WebEx interface. I saw several people were just greeting each other and saying hello. We certainly love to see that. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, we'll be sure to address those at the end and just discuss anything people might be sharing related to the recipe. If during the presentation you experience any audio or visual issues, please send a message to all panelists. That will make sure that my colleague, Cheryl Johnson-Ransaw, who's online with me, she'll be able to see those messages and potentially help troubleshoot any issues that you may be having. With that being said, we will go ahead and get started. And I do see a comment already asking about the website for the past demos. We'll be sure to share a link with everyone at the end of today's presentation. So today we're going to be making a superfood salad with a lemon dressing. Like most of the recipes I make, we're keeping it very simple and really stocking up on all the good vegetables that will help us be healthier. So in terms of equipment, we don't need much today. We're going to use a couple different mixing bowls. We're going to have a cutting board, and then I have gone ahead and cooked some quinoa on the stove behind me. Quinoa takes about 15 to 20 minutes to cook, so I typically do it in advance just for the sake of speeding things up for our demonstration. But to tell you a little bit about that food, if you're not familiar with it, we actually cooked it 2 weeks ago in our demonstration. It's somewhat similar to brown rice. It is high in carbohydrates. It's a healthy whole grain. Quinoa does have the benefit of having a little more protein than a lot of other grains do. So it's a great choice to mix into things to give you some sustained energy as well as a little bit of that protein. Whenever you buy it, you can buy it in multiple different colors. It's up to you what color you want to use. This is a blend of the 3 different colors. And essentially what we're going to do is just make 2 cups of cooked quinoa. The ratio for that is we're going to use 2/3 of a cup of dried quinoa, cook it according to the package directions, and then it should produce 2 cups on the stovetop. When I include the recipe for this, it'll break down all those steps in a little more detail. So don't be worried if you're unfamiliar with quinoa. We'll be sure to have that covered when we send out the recipe. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started with the primary components today. So we've got a couple of different vegetables that are working into this to make it a superfood salad. Our primary ingredient is kale. Now, if you're not a big fan of kale, you can absolutely substitute this for another green of your choice. We're just going to be working with kale today since that's what the recipe defaults to, but there are definitely other options. We're going to use 4 cups of kale, which is loosely equivalent to 1 bunch. You can buy it in the big bunch and then chop it up, or if you prefer to save time, you can buy one of the large bags of it that's pre-chopped. All right, so we've got that kale set over here to the side, and we're going to begin by making our lemon dressing. Now, this is a very simple dressing in about a smallish medium-sized bowl. We're going to combine a couple ingredients. We're going to do 6 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Now, olive oil is a great, heart-healthy fat, and it's a good base for a lot of salad dressings. It has a nice flavor to it. It's going to add a richness to what we're making, and it'll definitely help sort of soften up the flavor of the kale. If you've ever had raw kale before, it can be a little bitter and a little hard to chew on. Some people really enjoy it, but most people want a little more flavor to it, and this is going to help with that significantly. So 6 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, our heart-healthy fat, and then we're going to do about 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. You're welcome to use fresh lemon juice if you like. I'm just using the refrigerated lemon juice. It's a little bit easier for me to keep on hand since I use it very frequently. So 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, and then our 3rd tablespoon. Now, this is a pretty basic recipe when it comes to salad dressings, just mixing an oil with an acid, which in this case is our lemon juice. We're going to give it a little more flavor than that, though. We're going to do half a teaspoon of black pepper. Oh, I'm sorry, a quarter of a teaspoon. Quarter teaspoon of black pepper and half a teaspoon of table salt. And then just to balance things out and give it a small amount of sweetness, we're going to put in 1 teaspoon of honey. Now, you can use a different sweetener if you prefer. I think honey has a nice flavor, though, that we're going to take advantage of. So again, 1 teaspoon of that. And of course, honey has a tendency to stick to the inside of the spoon you have. You can try to get as much of it out. What you may want to do is have a spatula or another spoon nearby that you can sort of scrape the remains out into there, because we want to get as much of that in as we can. And then once you've got that in your bowl, just go ahead and whisk it together. You can use an actual whisk if you prefer, or just a spoon. I'm using the spoon that the honey was on to help more of that honey come off and get into the dressing. And we're just going to stir until it's well incorporated. We're trying to make sure the lemon juice, the olive oil, and all the salt and pepper are evenly mixed in there. So if you want to see what that dressing looks like, it just looks like a typical salad dressing, just an olive oil based one. We're going to set that over to the side for just a moment. And now let's come back to our kale. So I mentioned kale is a little bitter at first. It can be a little crunchy and chewy, and not everyone's a big fan of that. There's a technique we can do to help improve the texture of the kale and make it a little nicer for salads, and that's called massaging the kale, which sounds a little silly whenever we say it, but it is effective, and it does help break down some of those fibers a little bit and soften things up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just a couple teaspoons. We're not going to do all of the dressing. We're going to save most of that for later, but I'm going to probably take about 3 of these little teaspoons, which equals 1 tablespoon, just to get some of it lightly dressed. And using your hands, or if you prefer not to get your hands messy, you can use a utensil or something. We are going to just mix that into the salad. Of course, make sure your hands are clean and washed when you're doing this. And we'll do this for about a minute or 2. We're just lightly massaging it. We're not trying to squeeze it out or squash it or anything like that. Just gently moving it around. And this will break down some of those fibers, allow the olive oil and the lemon juice to soak into the kale, and that'll give us just an improved textural quality whenever we go to enjoy it. So I'll do this for just a little bit longer. Now, kale is often touted as a superfood with good reason. It is incredibly healthy for you. In addition to the fiber it provides, there's a number of key vitamins and minerals that we get from kale. Vitamin K is one of those that it's very rich in. There's a lot of nutrients that whenever we eat kale, we're helping check those boxes and making sure we're getting what our body needs to make it through a day. So I'm going to rinse my hands here real quick. All right, so we have massaged the kale. Again, the goal was to be gentle with it. We don't want to smash it or anything like that. You can skip this step, but I think you'll find the salad to be more enjoyable if you do incorporate it. So let's set that over to the side for now. We've got our massaged kale, our dressings whisked together, and let's get chopping some of these veggies. So first up is an English cucumber. We're going to just cut this into small slices. Nutritionally, there's some good benefits to the cucumber, mostly in the fact that it's just really high in water. So whenever you are trying to meet your fluid needs for the day, of course, drinking water is important. You've probably heard little rules of thumbs like, 8 to 12 cups of water is a good thing to aim for. Well, one of the neat things about eating fruits and vegetables is that they actually help us meet our fluid needs. So whenever we eat something like a cucumber that's really high in water, or maybe you're enjoying like an orange or some grapes, that counts towards the total water that your body needs for the day. So mixing stuff like this in is a great way to help meet those goals. Additionally, we're getting a little bit of fiber from the cucumber, like most vegetables have. And that's just a nice benefit. Fiber helps us feel full and satisfied, as well as it can help us with blood sugar control, healthy cholesterol, and just healthy bowel movements, which is something we may not all talk about very freely, but it matters and it's important. And nutrition can help us with that, keeping our digestive tract very, very healthy. So we've cut our cucumber up. I'm going to sort of scoot that over to the side here. And now let's talk about our bell peppers. So bell peppers, the basic cutting technique I do is I'm going to cut the top and the bottom off. Let me show you. So just cutting off the top, cutting off the bottom. And from here, you should have sort of a tube, but you've got this middle part that's connected usually by 3 to 4 points. I'm going to use the knife and just gently cut through those points. All right, and then you should be able to really easily just pull the center of that out so we can move that out of the way. That gives us a nice clean area to work with. This is all the vegetable we're going to enjoy here. And then I'm going to cut it down the center. And what I'm trying to do is reduce it to a sort of flat surface. Because if you try to cut a bell pepper, it's going to rock around. But when we do it this way, we make a flat surface, and that makes it a lot easier to cut. And now, from this point, you can cut it into thin strips, or you can just sort of dice and cube it. I'm going to be going for the dice route. You can do whatever you prefer. Some people like the thin strips. Other people prefer the cubed route. Whatever you think would be more pleasant on the salad. Now, bell peppers are super nutritious. They are an incredible source of vitamin C, which is really good for our immune functionality. A lot of people think of like oranges being a good source of vitamin C, and they certainly are, but vegetables can also pack a lot of that into them. So we're helping our immune system, supporting our overall health. We're getting fiber. We also get some vitamin A from these guys. So a nutritional superstar for sure. And I'm taking the top and bottom pieces that I separated and basically just running the knife through them to get similar sized pieces to what I had cubed earlier. This is not an exact science, just kind of feeling it out and getting them to similarly sized pieces. Okay, so we cut that one up, and I'm going to actually grab a plate real quick because I'm running out of room on my cutting board, and I want to make sure I've got room for everything. So I'm just going to set some of these vegetables off to the side since we've gone ahead and prepped them. And then we'll move on and cut up our yellow bell pepper. So nutritionally, the differences between the different color peppers, orange, red, and yellow are all going to be about the same. They are going to have the vitamin A, they're going to have the vitamin C, lots of fiber. Now, when it comes to the green bell peppers, they're a little different. So they're not quite as mature. Green bell peppers you can usually get for a much lower price. Now, I will emphasize green bell peppers are still very, very healthy for us. They are still a vegetable. There's lots of goodness in them. But in terms of the vitamin content, the yellow, red, and orange bell peppers are more mature and offer more vitamins for us to enjoy. So both are great options. Don't feel like you have to steer clear of any particular one. They're both very healthy for you, but we do get a little bit of a bonus with the red, orange, and yellow kind, which is why we're incorporating them today. Additionally, whenever I make food, I like to imagine that I'm creating a rainbow of all these different vegetables. So that's why we've got the green kale, the red bell pepper, the yellow bell pepper. We're going to have some red grape tomatoes here in a moment, the green cucumber coming in. It really makes for an appetizing looking dish. We like that visual variety. Okay, so we have chopped up the bell pepper. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and transfer that to this plate as well, just because I don't have quite big enough of a cutting board to really handle all this. You can see there are a lot of veggies going into this. That is the goal. We are trying to really fill this thing with vegetables and make it super healthy. So next up is our final vegetable for this mix, and that is our grape, or you can use cherry tomatoes. What we're going to do for these is just cut them in half. Nothing super complicated, just takes a minute. Be careful with these. They do tend to roll around. You can hold them steady and just cut them in half like that, and that will be perfect. If you prefer, you can quarter them and cut them a little more, but that's entirely up to you. This is a 10-ounce container of grape tomatoes, equal to about 2 cups. So if you're getting them from another source or in another size, about 2 cups will do for this recipe. In terms of nutrition, I talk about tomatoes a lot because they are so good for us. In addition to a little bit of vitamin C, giving us that fiber and some of that water content, they are a rich source of something called lycopene. Now, lycopene is an antioxidant, which means it has free radical fighting properties. And what that translates to is it can be beneficial for cancer prevention. So our bodies over time, they generate free radicals. They can damage cells, and things like lycopene that are antioxidants help our bodies fight back and stay healthy. So we really like incorporating tomatoes and other foods with antioxidants in them. Vegetables in general are just such a great source of it, which is why your doctor, your dietitian, why we're always trying to tell you, yeah, get some more vegetables in there. It's going to be really good for your body. And that's exactly what we're accomplishing today with this recipe. So just a couple more of these to go. And I will say, as I'm cutting up all these vegetables, at the end of the day, we're really just making a big salad, right? So the things that you want to incorporate, if you're not a fan of tomatoes, swap it out for something else. Maybe you don't like bell peppers or cucumbers. There are so many different vegetables we could top on this salad. At the end, the goal is just to have some fiber, some good vitamin and mineral content, and then some protein to balance things out. So we have chopped that all up. Let's go ahead and talk about assembling the salad together. So the first thing, I would recommend getting a pretty hefty size salad bowl. I've got this massive pink one from my roommate, and it's going to fit things nicely because this is a pretty big salad with all the vegetables we've got. You should be able to get anywhere from 4 to 6 servings out of this. So our base, our 4 cups of kale is going to go in first. I'm just going to scrape some of that extra stuff out. It might stick to the bowl because we massaged it with the oil. So we've got just our little kale base in there. Now you might notice that it's not taking up all that much volume, and that's because we still have a lot of vegetables to add to it to really bring it up to its final form. So you shouldn't have the bowl filled to the top with just the kale, or you're gonna have trouble fitting the rest of the ingredients. Now the next thing I personally like to add is the quinoa. So I mentioned we made 2 cups of quinoa after we cooked it. Just to give you a little demonstration of what it looks like, it's kind of speckled. If you haven't had it before, the closest thing I always compare it to is brown rice, but it's got a different texture, a different flavor. I find it really fascinating and really delicious, so I love incorporating it into things. And we're just going to scoop that quinoa out on top of the kale. So when we do this, we've got a lot of fiber and vitamins and minerals, but this is adding healthy carbohydrates to give our body energy. Our body loves carbohydrates. Sometimes we may overdo it on some of the carbohydrates we eat, but if we pick healthy choices like this, we're really nourishing our body, and that's what's important, is making those healthier carbohydrate selections. So now we've got our quinoa on top of our kale base going in there. Now, I'm adding the quinoa right after it's cooked, so it's still steaming a little bit. The salad is intended to be served cold. If you prefer, you can cook the quinoa in advance, let it cool and refrigerate it, and then add it in. I'm adding it all together here. We're going to refrigerate this. I find that helps the dressing sort of marinate with all the vegetables to create a nicer flavor. So I'm not too worried about the steamed quinoa going on top of the kale. So let's talk about our other ingredients here. We'll go ahead and just for now, I'm going to add in these cherry tomatoes. And from this point, really what we're doing is just dumping the rest of the ingredients on top, and we'll talk about them as we do so. So putting in these tomatoes. All right. Next, I'm going to add in the bell peppers and the cucumbers. Now, we haven't mixed anything yet, but once again, you're going to want a big salad bowl. There's a lot to this. This is great for if you're making it for your household or a big group, or you want to have leftovers for several days. Excellent recipe for that. So now we've got some healthy carbohydrates, a lot of fiber, vitamins, and minerals, but we're still missing some key things to balance a meal. When we balance a meal, there are 3 macronutrients that we're looking for: carbohydrates, healthy fats, and protein. Together, those fuel our body. They give us energy for our muscles, for our brain, for everything in our system that we need to be healthy. So we're missing a couple of those right now, and we're going to make up for that with our final ingredients here. This is half a cup of slivered almonds or sliced almonds. If you're not a big fan of almonds, walnuts are another great choice you could add in here, some crushed walnuts, but we're going to do half a cup of that and just sprinkle it on top. That's going to add a nice little crunch to it, some additional protein, and some more healthy fats. Next up, we're going to use 1 can of garbanzo beans or chickpeas. I've rinsed and drained them. We're doing a lower sodium variety. These little guys are nutritionally awesome. They're a great source of plant-based protein and very high in fiber as well. So 1 15-ounce can going in here, and we're going to put that on top. And then we're going to add what is probably my favorite ingredient, and that is the feta cheese. We're using feta cheese crumbles. We're going to do 3/4 of a cup. This stuff is so delicious. It's going to add a nice little, kind of punch of salt whenever you bite into it. It does add some protein and a small amount of calcium as well to our overall meal. So I'm going to sprinkle that on top. And then last but not least, we have our dressing, which we can drizzle over it. But before I do that, I'm going to start to stir this around. Once again, we basically just have a giant pile of ingredients right now. I'm going to stir this around. I want to bring more of that kale to the top. I want to make sure that it gets dressed well. I want to make sure that that feta cheese is spread out in the bowl so that every bite we take has a little bit of that delicious goodness in it. And we want to mix the vegetables around. One option, if you're worried about stirring it in the bowl, is you could mix the ingredients. Like I just dumped all the vegetables in at once. You could certainly mix them together in a smaller bowl to sort of get that variety happening. But if you've got a big enough mixing bowl, this will definitely do the trick and just get a little bit of all the different tasty foods we have here into each bite. So now we're looking at something a little closer to that picture I showed you at the beginning of today's presentation. And our final step is to drizzle the dressing on top of it. So I'm going to just go back and forth like this. All right. And once you've got your dressing in there, I would recommend tossing it again just to make sure that it's nicely incorporated. We want a little bit of flavor on each leaf of kale, on each cucumber slice, all the bell pepper pieces, the chickpeas, the sliced almonds, and that quinoa. And this is just such a healthy dish for you when we talk about all the nutrition that's in it. So I'll try to give you another close-up view of it. Hopefully you can make that out. It's absolutely beautiful with all the different colors we have there. So just to recap, the feta cheese is going to add some healthy protein to this. Also going to add a good bit of salt and a lot of flavor. We're limiting it to 3/4 of a cup though, because we do want things to be balanced. Our sliced almonds are adding healthy fats and some protein. Our chickpeas are adding fiber and plant-powered protein. We've got our kale as our base, our quinoa adding fiber and healthy carbohydrates, and then the cucumbers, the bell peppers, and those grape tomatoes rounding it out with just vitamin and mineral content. So much good poured into this, and then our dressing to kind of round it all out and bring those flavors together. As I mentioned, very big salad. I keep emphasizing that. You'll probably get about 6 servings out of this, depending on how large of a serving you give yourself. When we share the nutrition label, I'll be sure to pass along the calorie information, the carbohydrates, all that good stuff, so you can see how this might fit into your personal day. In terms of protein, if you get 6 servings out of this, 1 serving will have about 14 grams of protein. That's a nice balance to help you with a lunch meal, a dinner meal, make sure that you are getting your needs met for the day. If you eat this as a meal, I can promise you, you're going to be really checking off a lot of those boxes nutritionally, getting in those servings of vegetables, getting in that fiber, helping you meet those nutritional needs for the day. Storage, keep it in the refrigerator. It'll be good for up to about 3 to 4 days. On that 4th day, the cucumbers, the kale, you will notice a little bit of decrease in the texture quality just because it's been softening in the fridge. That's to be expected. But in those first 3 days, you should have a really lovely salad. And I do recommend eating it chilled. I think that's where the flavors are best. Right now, because I added the hot quinoa, things are kind of in a weird tepid situation because they've been out for a while. But I like to refrigerate and let it marinate. So as I mentioned, we're going to send a copy of the recipe with all the instructions as well as the nutrition info. And I see we've had a couple questions and comments, so I want to jump back in and make sure that I can address these. Okay, so one of the questions was about sharing our YouTube link for the past demonstrations. You're going to get a follow-up email after this when I give you the recipe that will have a link to that in it. So you'll be able to see past demonstrations, our guided meditation, our workouts, our stretch breaks, all of our different offerings. So keep an eye out for that in your email so that you can check those out. Okay, I see okay, here's a comment that if you've got, I'm actually not familiar with this. Mandolin slicer would make cutting cucumber quicker if you have one. So that sounds like a nice kitchen tool that would help you get through the cucumber a little faster. I know it was taking me a minute there. So definitely, if you've got ideas for resources like that, anything that can speed up your cooking process and put more time back into your day, that's a win. Okay, here's someone commenting about learning the way of cutting the bell peppers. Yeah, I found that technique online a couple years ago. Absolutely love it. Makes it really convenient, and I do eat bell peppers quite a lot, so I like having that. Okay, and here a comment was about using the warm quinoa to sort of make an intentionally warm salad bowl. They mentioned that they get stuff like that from Panera Bread or other restaurants. Absolutely, if you like the warm quinoa going in, especially on a day where it's a little chillier like this, you may really like that combination of flavors, so make that your own. Okay, here's a question. Can you use something other than chickpeas like black beans or another bean? Definitely. So we've used chickpeas a lot. Whenever you see me do tomatoes, cucumbers, maybe some feta, I tend to bring in chickpeas because That's sort of the Mediterranean flavor that we associate with it. But anytime I use a chickpea, you can pretty much always substitute black bean, kidney bean, pinto bean. It will work well in this recipe and still go nicely with the dressing. So if you've got another can of beans on hand that you want to use, definitely go for that. It'll work well. And nutritionally, they're pretty much identical. You're still getting the fiber, still getting the protein, so a great substitution choice. Someone asked me if they could stop by for a sample. I wish I could share this with you all. I'm pretty excited to eat it though, so I'll be munching on this for the next couple days. Okay, here's a question. If you don't have time to make the dressing, what would be a good one to purchase? Love this question. Anytime we make a recipe, the goal is simplicity and to save us time. But along the way, there are always going to be more steps we could take to speed that up. And buying a pre-made dressing could help you out with that, especially if you may not keep ingredients like this on hand. Generally speaking, if you wanted to look for a light sort of lemon dressing, that would work well. Vinaigrettes tend to be a little lighter and would work well in this context as well. So we had a heart-healthy fat, a little bit of an acid to kind of give it some sour tanginess, and then a slight amount of sweetness from the honey. So really any dressing could work, but I'd recommend sort of a light lemon dressing or a vinaigrette to top on this. I think it would come out really nicely. So great question. Of course, that's not to say if you prefer a creamier dressing, you could absolutely add that to this. If you wanted to balance things out, you could potentially maybe reduce the nuts to kind of make up for the fat difference there, or you might just enjoy both of those together, and you might find the salad a little more filling. So definitely make that your own. Let's see here. Okay, here's a question about the nutrition in cherry or grape tomatoes versus regular tomatoes. Excellent question. If we compare equal serving sizes, or weights, for example, like we've got 100 grams of a regular tomato, 100 grams of a Roma tomato, a cherry and grape tomato, they're going to offer pretty nutritionally similar things. Because they are, family members to one another in terms of the, vitamin C content, that lycopene, that fiber, they're all going to be good choices. So one does not come out as like a winner in that situation. It's more based on what's the right application. Do we want slices for a sandwich, little pieces for a salad, that sort of thing. So you can't go wrong with a tomato choice there. Here's a question about, have we done gout-friendly recipes before? So we have not specifically done gout-friendly recipes before. If you have, or you know someone with a condition like that, what I'd recommend doing is chatting with your doctor or seeing a dietitian one-on-one. They'll be able to give you a list of foods that are going to be friendly for these different conditions. A lot of the recipes that we make on this demonstration, they're all heart healthy. They're all good for a generally healthy diet, but a lot of them will meet the requirements for like a diabetic-friendly diet, a gout-friendly diet, things like that. So I'd recommend talking with your health practitioner one-on-one, kind of getting that understanding of the list, and you'd be surprised how many of these will fulfill those requirements. Yes, okay, question about English cucumber over regular cucumber. Very good question. You could definitely use a regular cucumber if you wanted to. It's not that big of a deal. I saw someone commented about the seedless nature of it. Some people like to use the English cucumbers for pita pockets, sandwiches, if they're not a big fan of the seeds. I can't really tell that big of a difference whenever I'm eating them. I like them both equally. So the recipe called for an English cucumber. It won't change anything significantly in the recipe if you just use a regular one, though. Okay, question about how long the salad would hold if making it for one person. So like I said, in the fridge, 3 to 4 days. On that 4th day, things might be a little mushier though. So if you can do it in 3 days, that's going to be ideal. Can I prep and chop the vegetables and keep them in the fridge to also save time? Yeah, definitely. Whenever you chop up the vegetables, you are kind of breaking down some of the things. So once you've chopped them, I would definitely try to use them within about 24 hours, even if they're in the fridge. Things do start to degrade in quality and we want to keep them as crisp and firm as possible. But if you've got a day, maybe a Sunday, you want to chop up some vegetables, have them ready so that when you come home on Monday night, throwing a salad like this together as a piece of cake, definitely go for that. Are avocados a good option to add to this salad? Absolutely. So the fats that we have in the salad right now, olive oil in our dressing, the feta cheese, and our sliced almonds, those are our sources of fats. Avocados are incredibly heart healthy. So if you wanted to add avocado to this, you definitely could. It will increase the calories. You can either reduce the portion size if you want to keep the calories about the same. Maybe you get 7 servings out of it. Or you could scale back things like the almonds to make a little more room for the avocado. But that's totally up to you. I do think it would go nicely with this. I really like avocado. It makes most salads a little bit tastier. So yeah, if you've got fun little additions like that, I could see doing, some people will do like sunflower seeds on top of a salad like this to add more of that crunch. We're using the almonds today to give us that texture. Okay. And I saw a lot of just nice compliments about how the salad looked. Definitely appreciate those. Like I said, I'm ready to eat lunch. So keep an eye out in your email for our follow-up message. We're going to send a link to the recording, a copy of the recipe, as well as a short survey where you can just let us know what you thought of today's session. If you enjoyed it, if you've got ideas for future recipes or things you'd like to hear about, we love that feedback. It helps us make better programs that you all can enjoy. If you're not already on our mailing list, we do events like this all the time throughout the week. We do 2 cooking demonstrations a month, and then we've got a variety of other offerings. I rattled some off earlier. If you're interested in joining our mailing list, you can email edws@gsu.edu. I'm going to put that in the chat here in just a moment, and we'll get you on that mailing list so that you can stay up to date on all of our events. We also plug our events on the GSU web calendar, and many of them are on the USG event calendar as well, so keep an eye out for them there. With that being said, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today. Keep an eye out for that email, and have a great rest of your day.